Rose. I'm the Artistic Director of the Fleetwood-Jourdain Theatre. How are you doing? First things first. Turn to the person sitting next to you. You don't have to lean behind or lean in front, and just simply say, hello, neighbor. Yeah, how you doing, neighbor? Turn off your phone, neighbor. I know this is a conversation, but we don't want your phone going off. You are seeing the set of the Baldwin Giovanni experience that hosted this weekend. The artwork is by local artist Sholo Beverly. All right? I can tell you a lot of things. I'm going to be right to the point. I just want to do one thing, like nothing else in life. I would say a very personal thank you to Gloria Bond Clunie. Those of the other panelists up here that have done some amazing things. I stand on her shoulders to be here. I've been here for 15 years. 1979. Contractually, I have to tell you that Gloria was 5 years old when she started the theater. And she'll tell you more about that, right? And I'm going to bring up Krista Fagan, who's the Director of Public Engagement for the Evanston History Center, to introduce the panelists and the moderator. I'll see you on the other side. Later, Gator. There's a button here somewhere. Here you go.
Excellent. Thank you, Tim. Thanks, everyone. Like Tim said, my name is Krista. I'm the Director of Public Engagement at the Evanston History Center. This is technically an Evanston History Center event, so we are based in the Charles Dawes House over on Greenwood Street. And we do house tours, we have an Evanston archives, we have lots of public programs. So if you're not from the Evanston History Center mailing list, and if you haven't been there before, we invite all of you to come to the Evanston History Center and discover more about so many aspects of Evanston. We also love to do partnerships. We do talks like this at the Evanston History Center, but we're really excited when we can do them in other places and in collaboration with other Evanstonians and Evanston organizations. So we're so happy to be here at Fleetwood-Jourdain Theatre. Thank you so much to Tim for all your support in making this happen. And also I wanted to thank the Evanston Arts Council, who was a supporter of this event. So really briefly, because I do want most of the time for the panelists to talk, the idea for this just came about as we were looking back and seeing that the Northlight Theatre was celebrating its 50th anniversary. The Evanston Arts Council is celebrating its 50th anniversary. There was clearly something going on with a lot of cultural things happening in Evanston, but also nationally in the late to mid 1970s. So we wanted to take a look at this moment, and especially as a way to start the conversation, because we could have had so many panelists, and I think maybe even some of you in the audience up here, looking at Piven Theatre Workshop and Northlight Theatre and Fleetwood-Jourdain Theatre as three companies that all started in the late 1970s, are about 50 years old, and are still thriving, doing amazing work in Evanston, or in the case of Northlight, soon to be back in Evanston. So with that, I'm really excited to introduce the panel for this evening. So first is our moderator, Mark Larson. Mark is a theater scholar. One of his books is Ensemble, an Oral History of Chicago Theater, which he will have for sale upstairs after the event this evening. And Mark was also a teacher at ETHS for several decades. So welcome, Mark. You guys can come up, either together or whatever. Secondly, I'd like to invite BJ Jones. BJ Jones is the Artistic Director of Northlight Theatre, I believe in his 26th year as Artistic Director. And that reminds me, if you haven't gotten it, there's a QR code for an online program. So the program has more detailed bios on everyone. It has some brief information on Evanston theater history, and it also has some historical documents and photos. So one reason to scan the program is to see BJ in a play, a Northlight play in 1978, I think. There's a photo in there. So. Next, welcome Jen Green. Jen is the Artistic Director of Piven Theatre Workshop right here at the Noise Cultural Arts Center. Jen has also been with Piven 25 plus years, and she was a student of Byrne and Joyce Piven. And last, of course, we have Gloria Bond Clunie, which Tim already introduced. Welcome, Gloria. So, Gloria, for those of you who don't know, is the founding artistic director of Foster Community Theatre, which became Fleetwood-Jourdain Theatre. In addition, she's the founding member of the Playwright Ensemble at Victory Gardens Theatre, many other accolades, and taught for years and decades to the District 65 Drama Department. So we are recording this on Facebook Live. Welcome to everybody who's joining us online. We'll have the recording available. And there will be a reception afterwards, so we invite you to join us for some snacks and some further conversation after the panel.
On the second floor.
On the second floor, yes. Thanks, Tim. All right, thank you everyone for being here, and I'm going to give this.
Thank you. And thank you all for being here. This is really nice. This is a beautiful spot, too. I haven't been in this room for a really long time, and I just think it's gorgeous. And I'm excited to be here too because these are my friends. And as of today, I'm Gloria's friend too. But it's an honor to be with you all. I hesitate to start on sort of a sad note, but I do want to acknowledge this. Some of you may know Tony Adler. Tony was the A theater critic for The Reader for 40 plus years. I'm seeing people nodding. 40 plus years at The Reader, and it actually, his time there overlaps with all of this as well. It's part of the reason I'm mentioning it. He's an ETHS grad, an Evanstonian, and I remember his reviews being extremely eloquent and lengthy. This is when they could be, but in a really good way. I kind of miss that. The reviews are so short now, but Tony did all of that, and yesterday we all learned that he had died, just yesterday. And I just want us all, as we think about Evanston and we think about the history of Chicago theater, to think of Tony. So thank you for that. So let's find out, I love origin stories. I just love origin stories. So I'd like to hear what was the beginning of the story of your theater company. And I thought we'd do this in chronological order, though Northlight pivot our time. So we'll start with Jen. Where did Piven Theatre Workshop begin?
Oh no, I have to start. And I have to say, Piven is very much a storytelling theater. The oral storytelling theater is very much where our heart is. So I wound up calling many people to help me tell this story today. But what's really beautiful about Piven Theatre is Joyce always said that it started slowly, it started organically, and that is why we don't quite know when we started. I was just having a conversation with the brilliant Leslie Brown, one of our former executive directors, who said, Jen, when I met you, you told me you didn't know when it was, and I told you it was 1971, and she is correct. But it started in this beautiful way. Lore has that Joyce saw Anne Cusack, one of the Cusack family.
Jen, can I interrupt?
Yeah.
Can you say who Joyce is?
Joyce Piven is our founder, along with Byrne Piven. They came here in the late 60s, early 70s, because Byrne had a contract with Northwestern, and Joyce was looking for something to do. They had come from University of Chicago Theater, the Compass Players, Viola Spolin, Paul Sills, That story company, they had gone to New York, studied with Uta Hagen, with Mira Rostova, with Etienne Decroux, and they were looking for a creative home. And Byrne had a contract with Northwestern. They thought maybe it's here. They had a young family, and Byrne was teaching at Northwestern. Joyce was looking for something, an actress in her own right, an incredible teacher in her own right. But she needed someone to take her kid to school, and that was Ann Cusack. And Ann took her young son to school, and that was Joyce's initial thought of creating a space in Evanston for young people to become artists. And that was the start of our Young People's Company. And it's interesting, it's not the children's company, it's the Young People's Company. It's honoring that idea of young people as emerging artists. And she began teaching at the Evanston Arts Center. She began teaching off and on. She began a teacher's class because she saw mentorship as the center to our theater company, and it still is, in which you were a beautiful member. And reached out and started to have this small company of young people performing around Evanston. And organically, that small company performing around Evanston inspired teachers, inspired directors, inspired other actors. We were incorporated in 1971, and we are a flagship tenant of the Noyes Cultural Arts Center where we are right now. It was a public school, and through the joint efforts of multiple community members turned it into the cultural center that it is today, a brilliant public and city partnership that has brought so many theater companies forward, so many artists forward. And if there's one thing I can say that is true about our theater company, is the idea that we are all enough, and if we are all enough, we can create magic together and create transformation together. We nurture emerging artists, we nurture creative talent, we have shows, we do all of those things, but the kernel of it is the idea of the everyday community member having something to say, and being able to have the platform to say it. And I had said, as I was talking to people, Mark Larson's going to fact check me. So if there's something I have not said, please, Mark, please bring it forward.
I'm going to do that now. That's 1971. We're going to get to 1974 in just a second, but we're going to talk about the work of each of these companies. I think it's important to mention briefly the incredible history of Joyce and Byrne. Where did they come from?
They started at University of Chicago. One thing that Joyce often sort of spoke about was this idea of post-World War II optimism. That idea that creatives could do anything. And she found some like-minded folks at the University of Chicago that were based in Viola Spolin. Viola Spolin is a theater artist based in the idea that game and play and transformation connects us all. Anyone can find those creative well springs to tell their stories from. And this idea of game and transformation then inspired Paul Sills, also at the University of Chicago, to see that all literature can be literature for the stage. And all literature can be transformed by a group of like-minded people having a common creative language. And so from the University of Chicago, we've got, help me out, we've got Ed Asner, we've got
Mike Nichols,
Elaine May,
Fritz Weaver, Barbara Harris. They were all part of that group.
And these artists went to New York, they stayed in Chicago, they went to California. The Second City has seeds in this community. The Story Theater movement has seeds in this community. And Piven Theatre Workshop has seeds in this community. What Piven Theatre Workshop contributes is this idea that living game can be an access point for every person. There's no gatekeeping to it, and how you structure these games can offer you the ability to tell your own story or tell the greatest literature written. How do we do that? Through this idea of shared language. And Bird and Joyce brought that ethos to Evanston, brought that ethos starting with young people, and let it grow and let it pollinate through the resources of Evanston, whether it be the school system or the Evanston Arts Center, whether it be, I think Landscape was their first production that happened on the lawn outside of this building, their first adult production, but sort of brought that idea of I think egalitarian play to Evanston that also has those social justice roots that were part of Viola Spolin, Settlement, Jane Addams' Hull House, kinds of roots that we still have today. We do work that's in Evanston. We teach classes in Evanston, but our roots are also about how do we offer opportunity to historically underrepresented populations. So we also have an ensemble that is in Cook County Jail for Women. We also have an ensemble of adults with developmental disabilities. We don't co-opt this work just for the professional actor. We see that everyone is an actor. Everyone is of a professional level, no matter who you are.
Thank you for adding that, because I think it'll make the other stuff make sense. So 71-ish, and then 1974, Northlight started. What was the origin of Northlight?
Well, Northlight, we're on Facebook Live. I gotta tell the truth.
You've got to get it right.
1974, that's actually when we were incorporated. We didn't start actually producing until 1975, although we did a lot of fundraisers. Our first artistic director was Mike Nussbaum, who just passed away at 99 and 9/10. Just
You almost
the
made it
week
to
before I
100.
turned 100. Mike Nussbaum was the first artistic director. It was started by Greg Candell. He was getting his MFA at Northwestern, and also with the help of Frank Galati, two-time Tony Award winner Frank Galati, and Academy Award nominee. So they started raising funds in 74 and incorporated in 74, but we really didn't appear on stage at the Kingsley School on Green Bay Road until 1975, and it was a play called Jumpers by Tom Stoppard. Mike was the star and Frank directed.
Russell, what's his name? Russell
Vanderbilt.
Yeah, Vandenbroek told me an interesting story. He was one of the ones who got the idea started, right?
No.
That's why I'm asking.
No, it was Greg Candell. Well, Mike Nussbaum was the first artistic director. I have a funny story about this. Just jerked. But I was told by Mike Nussbaum, so I know this is true. Mike Nussbaum, then Greg Candell took over, then after him, it was Eric Steiner, who was only artistic director for a little over a year. He died of complications from AIDS. And then Russell Vandenbroek, and he was artistic director for 11 years.
Yes.
And then I was his successor. So he was 11 years and I'm 28.
28 years. Amazing. Everybody, go ahead. I should applaud you for putting up with that. And moving back to Evanston, but we'll get there.
Yeah.
Gloria, 1979, do I have that right?
Yes.
Or you're just
I'm the
being
young one
nice.
here. Actually, it's kind of going back to the year 1971 and 1974. 1975, officially 1979, but when I look at the roots of Fleetwood-Jourdain Theater, originally I came up from Henderson, North Carolina, which is about as big as the stage, and went to Northwestern for theater. As a theater major. And when I was there, it was in '71, so obviously exciting things were happening in Evanston. There was, in 1968, I think some of you old Evanstonians might remember, there was the takeover of the bursar's office. And African American students gained a voice. There were concerns, and if you remember '68, just in general in Chicago, it was a very volatile time. And they made strides, when they say, if you want to make change, they went for the bursar's office where the money was. And significant changes occurred in Northwestern, which brought more African American students, actually African American students couldn't live on campus at that particular time. And so I was a part of that wave. And coming in '71, there was a new theater group that started there, and it was Black Folks Theater. And it changed my life, Eileen Cherry. And there was the ensemble, which is still, the choir, which is still an amazing choir, that Black choir that sings at Northwestern. And Eileen was the force of nature. And she took us into Chicago to a place called Kuumba Theater Workshop. I hope someone remembers Kuumba Theater Workshop, Val Gray Ward. And her mission in life was to tell African American stories at a time when they weren't being told, or not widely, not beyond our community sometimes. Not in, it was the Black theater movement for that particular time was starting all across the country. And so Val Gray Ward had Kuumba Theater Workshop. Kuumba means creativity. And there was ETA, Jackie Taylor's Black Ensemble. She was in a storefront doing, and she was Cinderella. You know, she has this story about Cinderella. She was the other Cinderella at that time. So there was some Black theater beginning to start, but when you look at the vastness of Chicago, not a great deal. And there was a chant that Kuumba did when we went. They stood in a circle and they chanted, Umoja means unity, Umoja means unity. And Umoja is a Kiswahili word, and that was the focus of that theater group. And that theater group infused Black Folks Theater, and Black Folks Theater infused me. And again, I didn't realize that it was just starting, but it was just starting. And at one point, I was an artistic director for Black Folks Theater. When I graduated, I taught at Chute Middle School. Go Chute! I got some of Chute parents here. Yes. Went right out of Northwestern. A wonderful woman, never planned to teach. Ann Thurman taught us that we should tell stories, and young people should tell stories. So that whole zeitgeist of an Ann Thurman, there was theater in the Evanston schools from K through 8, starting from the 1920s. As I said, I never planned to teach, but I was sucked in into this mission. And when we talk about the history of why is Evanston a thriving theater community, one of the reasons is from 1920, children have been taught theater, creative drama, to tell their stories. And so for 2 years I was at Chute, and Chute was a relatively brand new school. It had a 600-seat auditorium and more fly space than the Goodman Theater. Sound system, whole bit. So I was in heaven even though I didn't plan to teach. And taught for 2 years, got sucked into IBM as a marketing representative. God is good because he takes us where we need to go. If I had not been there, I would have not known anything about a profit and loss statement, the business angle of theater. And so on that journey, I realized after 2 years I would not be able to do theater if I was at IBM because we're flying all over the country and the way that it was structured, I would not be in a place to do theater. So I stopped. And there was a moment of wondering, how will I get back involved in theater? And I started to audition, and I auditioned for a show at Victory Gardens, a Steve Carter show that Chuck Smith was directing. Thank God I didn't get the part. But I did ask Chuck, I said, Chuck, and I think I was just meeting him at that time. I said, I directed before, I directed in high school, I directed at Northwestern. I would like, to continue to direct. He said, go direct anywhere. And so I called the community centers in Evanston. You know how you sometimes just don't do what people say? For some reason, I actually listened to Chuck. And if you know Chuck, you listen to Chuck. And so I called Foster Community Center, I called Robert Crown, and I called 2 other centers, and Foster was the first place that said, and it turned out that Foster Community Center was in the heart of the black community. That was the first place that I went. Julius Evans said, come over. I think he said in 2 days. Robert Crown said, we can get together in a week. God is good. Went over. Julius Evans said, and at that time, let's say Foster Center, Fleetwood-Jourdain Center was not the thriving center that it was. But he was working to make it stronger. And I mentioned the idea that I would love to direct. He said, well, I'm not sure we have a draw here. Maybe we can do classes. And then we came up with the idea of doing What the Wine Cellars Buy. I had seen it. It was a Ron Milner play that had been on Broadway, that toured here at the Schubert. I'd seen it. And it had a lot of people in it. And so I think there were 16 in the cast. And so we decided to do this show. And again, when we're talking about the zeitgeist of Evanston evolution, where are we sitting now? Noyes Cultural Arts Center. It's a former school. Where was Northlight originally? At Kingsley, a former school. And eventually, Fleetwood-Jourdain was evolved into a former school, into a school. We did What the Wine Cellars Buy. It turned out to be an amazing draw. We had, I think, 3 nights. And it was, we pulled people out of the weight room. We had 6 Fresnels. We were building a set. We had no money. I said to Roy Conley, okay, we need to finish this platform. Can you go buy 6 nails? And he looked at me and he said, Gloria, you can't buy 6 nails. You have to get a box. I said, I don't think we can afford a box. But he said, I'll buy the nails. So he bought the nails, finished the set. And it was, we had 2 students that we met at Wisdom Bridge. The Mikado, I think Bob Falls was doing at the Mikado, one of the Mikados, Mikado Hamlet, Mikado, I don't know. It was one of the Mikados. He was in a Mikado phase. And there were 2 students who were taking classes, high school students who were taking classes at the Goodman. And I mentioned that we were having auditions. I mean, we were just searching every place. We pulled 2 people out of the weight room. We had community people come, and it was a community theater. And once we did that show, Julia said, we want a theater here. I didn't set out to be an artistic director. I did, as Tim mentioned, I was 5, So I didn't set out to be an artistic director. I wanted to direct. but I also knew that our stories were important. Black stories were important, and they weren't being told. And so we went on. The next one was, oh gosh, I remember Cicely. She is an older woman now. We did a children's show, and she was 5 years old. Caps for sale. And the next show was the seniors. And we had My Home. And one of the seniors was a WPA player. And so that whole idea of community, who is in our community? And we continued on 2 years with creating a season, and the community supported, and then the foster community board said, we want a real theater, because we had just pulled a platform out. We moved past 6 for Nails, but not much further. And so they talked with Dolores Holmes. Mamie Smith came to Evanston, and I raised her name because she was between Mamie Smith and Dolores Holmes, they were forces of nature. Bo Price was on the board, and they said, we want a real theater. So they, right next door to Fleetwood-Jourdain Center, it was Foster Community Center, was the old Foster School. And it was then becoming family focused, and we were, the city of Evanston negotiated so that we would have that space, and they renovated the theater space, a shop, an office space, and a reception space. And above the door was a very proud moment when they had the canopy that said Fleetwood-Jourdain Theater. The center was renamed after 2 icons in the community. The center was, and so the theater was renamed. I was really excited about Foster Community Theater because it was like, we foster the community. But then,
That is
it
nice.
changed. That was why we had that name for so long. But then when it became Fleetwood-Jourdain after the Fleetwoods and the Jourdains, but Umoja Unity was on the big marquee across, and that's really how we started the community. There are several people who were in those productions who were here, and it was at times sleep on the stage, make the sets, do the props, and then theater manager, added theater manager, hiring designers, but the focus of it, even though the community the word has been dropped, and it's Fleetwood-Jourdain Theater. The sense of community, and in the word community, the end of it is unity. Let us all remember that as our communities are challenged. Unity is in the word community, and so that's how it got started.
That's
Fleetwood-Jourdain Community Theater.
I love that.
Can I say one other thing? And I also took classes at Piven, because when you got out of Northwestern and you were teaching in the district, all of us went to Joyce and figured out what we were going to do, because we were all like 5 trying to teach young children. And of course, went to Northlight, which is at Kingsley, up the street. So that whole sense of theater.
Yeah.
Frank Galati. I met Frank Galati as a cherub, and I was a little black girl sitting on a step at Northwestern, because they didn't have buildings then. They didn't have that big fancy center. Everything was spread out in buildings, little buildings, houses. And Frank came up and he said, hello. How are you? And he struck up a conversation. So that whole sense of community.
It's so rooted in, to hear you all talk about where you came from and so forth. There are sensibilities that are embedded in the work that you do, and it continues to inform you today. I just find that fascinating. You got me interested in the notion of the Evanston zeitgeist in its relation to the arts and theater here. And I'm wondering, maybe I could start with you, BJ. Is there a way that you feel that Evanston has been, well, I know you're going to move back in, but I'm thinking of the whole area, you know, Skokie and Evanston, is uniquely suited for your theater? Because I know that you're coming back here.
You know, the 70s actually, there was a school of thought that America sort of economically and socially peaked in 1973. Historians, there are several historians say that, not just so much for the arts, but I think that's kind of true. I think in the 70s actually were the height of the regional theater movement. And the North Shore in particular, at one time, you may remember at Barra College, there was the Academy Theater at Barra College. And is it your phone? Oh, it's your phone. The Academy Theater was only in the summer up at Barra, and it had a lot of stars that they came in from New York, and they would supplement actors from Chicago. But there was a growing fomenting artist community here. That's actually where Piven came from. There were artists that were drawn to Chicago because there was an audience here, an audience that was interested and passionate about the work. They weren't like New York audiences. People didn't get dressed up in ties and, you know, start at 8:30. And people were actually interested in the work. It was much more casual. But there was an intellectual curiosity and passion. And in particular, I think, in my mind, I'm from Cleveland, but that's not where I'm coming from now. I'm from Cleveland, and my wife and I moved to Chicago in 1974 because we heard that there was something brewing here artistically. We had been with the Cleveland Playhouse, and so where I was a child actor. So we moved here, and there was stuff brewing. And it was a wonderful combination, I think, of both the artists who needed places to work and created places to work, and a huge gaping maw for what theater is. And I think that friction is what, and in particular Evanston, which when I came here, my vision of Evanston was, you know, a lot of hippies putting down roots and macrame and in other words, people like me. And so that artistic passion, that intellectual hunger, probably fostered by Northwestern's presence in the community, I think became very fertile ground. And I think that artists decided, I mean, Wisdom Bridge was, do you remember making the steps up to Wisdom Bridge? You know, Frank Galati and I did travesties and the importance of being earnest there. Megan Mullally and I did a musical there while she was a freshman at Northwestern. It was her first professional show, but we had plastic on the windows, and it was 1979. I don't know if you remember that winter, but it was pretty damn cold. And Frank and I did travesties and the importance of being earnest there. And I remember Essie Cupson coming up the stairs and with two guys in tow to put in carpeting for us and to put windows actually in. And that was the edge of, you know, Rogers Park and the border of Rogers Park and Evanston. So I think what was happening was as much in the seats as it was on the stage. And because we can't do it without an audience. And I think that continues today. Now the culture's a lot different. We built theaters with subscriptions back then. Subscriptions are on the wane, although ours are up, gratefully. But I really think that this community had something special about it. And when I talk about the community, I mean the greater Chicago. You know, when I came here, there was the Ivanhoe, there was the Drury Lane on the south side, there was Organic. St. Nick just started off, and VG at roughly the same time.
Remains.
Remains was later, and Hull House was earlier, which then that's where Steppenwolf went into, and then Frank and I did Division Street after Steppenwolf left there and moved to Halstead Street. But I just think that there was a community here that had the level of sophistication and passion, but not pretension about what theater is. And I think Evanston is in many ways sort of the epicenter of that kind of not fussy, but organic kind of, it was a place that Byrne and, I remember the first time I met Byrne. Jeremy does a great imitation of Byrne. First time I met Byrne, I think I was 24. And we were auditioning. He did a lot of commercials, as you know. He was
Great voice.
He was Uncle Ben. And he had a great voice, but he was Uncle Ben, the Rice guy. And I remember we were downtown auditioning, and there were like 6 guys supposed to do this sort of commercial. He showed up a half an hour late. Fortunately, we drove in with his top down and his Uncle Ben's cap on. And he showed up, and we were waiting to go in. I said, well, why don't we rehearse so we can all train? Do a good job at the audition. Byrne walked in, and I said, okay, well, we were just rehearsing. And he said, he looked at me and he said, who died and left you king? Got an instant snapshot of Byrne Piven in my mind for me. But that's, that's who he was. The force of that personality is, I think, what got it started. And you can't have, look at how magnetic Tim Rose is. He comes up there and grabs your attention. It really puts me to shame as an artistic director, because you have to have that kind of force of nature, that kind of charisma, in order to rally people, not just audiences, but artists to rally around you, to have the faith and the trust. And that's really, and I think Chicago's got a lot of that.
I do too. And go ahead.
I was going to say, I think one of the things that I so appreciated about Chicago and Evanston was new work. That not being afraid of, and audiences would still come back. You could try something, and it could be great, or it could be, we're trying, and then audiences would say, we're with you. We're with you as an organization and as a storyteller, and have faith in you. And, that I think was exciting. I mean,
Martha Levy, the late artistic director of Steppenwolf, used to refer to, a lot of theaters, especially out in the regionals, would do the work that was already done, reheated, from New York or from off-Broadway. And Martha Levy used to refer to that as McTheater. But we don't sit for that. One of the great things about Chicago audiences is that they embrace our experiments, and that they have as much invested in the experience as we do as artists, because they're the other cast member. And there's I think a real realization that this moment is I always say actors put a chunk of their life on stage, and I think the audience feels that, their participation in it. I'm going to spend 2.5 hours of my precious life with you. And that interaction, that cross current of blood, sweat, and tears is the value of, you can only see it here, and you can only see it tonight. And when you realize the preciousness of your life and their life, that friction is what makes, I think, Chicago. Look, the Tony went to Purpose, which grew up at Steppenwolf last year. If you look at how much, when you think of David Cromer, who is the most prolific director on Broadway, who went to ETHS and who grew up in Evanston, when you think of all the artists that are on Broadway right now who come from here,
Harry went to Northwestern.
Harry,
Chicago.
associate of art. This is, we have a very special community here. It's not like that in Seattle. It's not like that in San Francisco. It's not like that in Boston. We got it going on.
There's a story that's kind of indicative of that, and it all took place here. There was Next Theater here, and Dexter Bullard was directing in the next level. Definitely. They did incredible work. And the first time anybody saw, no, it was the second time everybody saw Michael Shannon, who's in every other movie now, was right down the hall here with Tracy Letts. He was just a kid, basically.
No, it was here. This was where his face.
This is the actual Next Theater space.
Dexter had this classroom where they painted all the windows black.
It's where they did Killer Joe.
Killer Joe. Tracy Letts played it. Nobody wanted. He brought it to the Next Theater here to Harriet, and she said, "Well, let's do it." It had nudity, and it's very close quarters. It's really gross in a lot of ways. Misogyny, and all these lovely things. But somebody on the board got a hold of the script and Xeroxed it and gave it to other board members. And some of the board members said, "We're going to quit if you do this show." And Harriet said, "Go ahead." And they did Killer Joe. And we got Tracy Letts. We got Michael Shannon.
Speaking of
Dexter
Facebook,
Bullock.
on Facebook today, Albert Williams, who was a critic at the Reader and a follower, Tony Adler, reprinted his review of Killer Joe on his Facebook page today. And I just reread it because I thought, wow, I couldn't tell whether or not he would hand it or not, but it was one of those reviews that was like, I don't know what I just saw. And it's horrifying.
That's good.
And but go see it anyway.
But that's exactly what you're talking about in terms of the audience embracing it, Harriet taking a chance with it. Jed, is there a way that Evanston has been uniquely situated to give you a happy home? You and Ben?
Yeah, I think so. What's lovely and that I'm hearing across the board here is the way that Evanston says yes and, right? That's a principle of, that's a principle of improvisation. That's a principle of our theater company, but it's the way that you get stuff done. Is people saying, yes, I see you have a vision. Yes, you should direct. Yes, here is a place within a school for your home. And it really mirrors in some ways, and this is a little bit before my time. I come up also through Northwestern, also that engine of young people coming into the space to stand on the shoulders, much like Tim Rose stands on your shoulders, much like I stand on Joyce's shoulders, but mirrors that idea of Chicago theater where you can do something in a basement, you can do something in a church basement, you can do something in an old public school, and people will come see it. That sense of possibility was still there, even though there were these really rich and meaningful forefathers like Steppenwolf, who had made their round to the Holstead space, that not yet, to the space that they're in now. But that Evanston was this small version of being able, a college town small version of being able to do a space in a classroom, to do a space in a basement. And if you're the kind of theater company where it's the word that makes the environment, you thrive with nothing. You thrive with your 6 nails. Right? That you manage to find because you're relying on the sophistication of an audience that has the imagination to meet you. And I feel like that that aspect of this being a college town with a rich arts invested school system allowed these companies to exist and to thrive and to have things like a Next Theater develop, like the younger theater companies that are coming up through the bubble in Evanston. I mean, one thing that Piven has very much been committed to since the pandemic is this idea of we're one of the rare small, under 100 black box theater for a group to take a risk at and to see what's going to happen. And that is our ethos to say yes. Yes, that the more the merrier in this crazy business that we are in. And to say that something can go up one night in Evanston, something can go up and have a long run, like the storied pieces that we're talking about. I mean, I feel like that's, and also being grateful to the Noise Cultural Arts Center for being here for so long. The Noise Cultural Arts Center was considered to be an incubator space for just the kind of companies that we're talking about, and we've been around long enough that I think we're a little bit established now, with the famed Fleetwood-Jourdain moving into this beautiful space.
And I think raising up the city of Evanston, the city actually, because Fleetwood-Jourdain is a part of the city, is a city, it's an arm of the city. And for the city, and there have been, over the 45 years of its existence, there have been ups and downs financially. One of the reasons that we're here, instead of still being at Fleetwood-Jourdain or in what was Family Focus, the school, was there were, at one point, a budget cut. I mean, like, dire budget cut. And, but the community rallied around and said, yes, cut a lot, but don't cut our theater. Don't cut our theater, and find a way. And so it evolved to say, well, we have this space here, and maintaining the name coming from the roots of the Black community. So, yeah, that sense of a government organization that supports theater, especially in a time when government organizations are, well,
And just to yes and that, the spirit of collaboration that exists in Evanston, I mean, so much, I mean, just in the way that we operate, Piven Theatre and Fleetwood finding hand-in-hand ways to amplify each other's mission in this building, the way that Gaslights up at Northlight with Jessica Thieves, who grew up at Piven Theatre Workshop and is now at Northwestern, just the way that all of our talents are not kept within our own, but is about sharing, is about creating resources for each other, about amplifying each other's mission. And certainly the wonderful Northlight coming back is a way for us all to have this new opportunity to talk about our history and to celebrate some rebirth.
You were mentioning about education and the arts coming out of the schools and Northlight being in Kingsley. But we're at a place now, the first thing that's cut in every budget in a school are the arts. And if it weren't for theater, I'd be in a gutter someplace. And Candy Corr, my wife. But the truth is, I wasn't a great student, and I went to private boys' schools, but I wasn't a great student, but I found the arts, and the arts saved my life. And I think that's true across the board. And so one of the things that we do, what you do, what Fleetwood does, is now we all have educational aspects in our institutions. And for instance, during the pandemic, we serve 4,000 students. We serve more students than Goodman or Steppenwolf. In terms of, we did it through Zoom, and our education department was expanded. We got a huge grant from a patron who helped us elevate the education department, and now it's more important than ever because the Kennedy Center is going to die, and that's just the beginning of what's happening right now. And I feel safe in saying this in this very blue light. But it's incumbent upon us and our missions even more to reach out and create safe spaces for all of us and our children, because the theater saved me, and it can save a lot more souls out there. Performance art and even AI, as it develops, will have huge elements of performance. So I think it's a big responsibility on the part of all of the live arts, and I think that's held highly in value in Evanston.
Thank you for that. Jen, it makes me think of your program in prisons too. Can you say something about that?
Yeah, I mean, we do work in Cook County Jail for women. We bring our program there, and yeah, it's so much about education is about the beating heart that entwines empathy and critical thinking. I mean, two things that we are in dire need of in all communities. And what our jail program does. And I have to say, it's a jail program. We are there with people who are not able to afford bail to get out, people who are waiting to be tried, women who could be there for over a year in our program, which on the one hand we say, wow, I love working with this talented person, and on the other hand, why in hell's name are they still waiting for the slow wheels of justice to turn? But we bring our play there, and the feedback that we get from women in our program is it is a small element, a small teaspoon of what it's like to be human and what it's like to feel free when so much is outside of their control and they are waiting. And one of my favorite stories about our work in jail, and it's so simple, is we just got a ball in our hands, and just the idea that the space and weight of our bodies can transform the world around us is something that we bring to the jail with us. And we also encourage this idea that's our work of mentorship, of how do you bring what you learn here, because we often have 100 people on the wait list for our program. We can only serve and be allowed in the jail so long. How can you bring what you do here elsewhere? How can you bring this back to the tier? And one of the women came back and they were playing ball toss on their tier and throwing this ball across the room and catching it. And one of the officers was like, "That's contraband, give that back." And it is just a metaphor of how something so simple as our imaginary ball can change the world and change a power dynamic and change the ability for people even who are being judged for the worst moment in their life to create connection and joy with each other. And that is sort of what we try to do in every class. But it shines most in those darkest spaces. It shines most in those spaces where we need empathy and where we need justice and where we need our eyes to look, right? Theater allows our eyes to look. And that's one thing that Joyce and Byrne, and we all do a Joyce and Byrne. It's our rite of passage to do a Byrne and Joyce. But it's central to theater. It's central to our mission. It's central to all of our mission. Is how do we have the courage to see and be seen in a real, honest, truthful space. And that's what we try to bring to jail with us.
Well, that's what I'm so struck by, all three of you, and just in terms of the social commitment through the arts that makes me so proud of Evanston and Chicago too. Gloria, would you want to say something about your education programs there and what you're doing right now?
Well, actually, I would, if Tim was here, I would, and he is here at some point when we all get together, definitely ask him. He continues to mentor. He continues to bring students in from, one of the joys that I truly had was being able to, a student that I taught, he had invited me to, he had commissioned me to write a play, so a student that I taught in middle school was suddenly now in a production here that I was writing. And so that whole idea of the students that he mentors, both at Northwestern, at the high school, and he's involved with Evanston Children's Theater also.
Tater
excited
tots.
to see it continue. I'm sorry, tater tots.
Tater tots.
Tater tots. These are the little tots. Tater tots, the tater tot group. Which is something that, again, the second production that we did was Caps for Sale, and Cicely became an alderwoman, you know, as we watched her grow up. So yeah, so it's ongoing, it's continuing. And that's something, remember, I was a founding artistic director, and one of the graces that I have, I'm glad that you have stuck it out for 28 years. Keep on going. But one of the true joys is to be a part of an institution that continues when you step away. Wethlin Bronner, who was also from Northwestern and part of, who knew that whole Umar Johnson's unity and acted with it, was the second artistic director. Luther Goins, who was also equity head, was artistic director. Philip Vandress, Ebony Joy, and actually the longest running, and hopefully he will keep running and racing and creating amazing productions, is Tim Rose. And I met Tim in North Star. I met Tim and his wife in my first Victory Garden show. So that whole idea of families that have been created. There's a couple that's sitting here that met on the stage. Hi, Andre. My Shanice. That met on the stage at Fleetwood, you know, and sons are now involved in theater. So that, as I said, that community is ongoing, and for me, it's the joy of seeing that something was strong was created, and then through other people, it continues.
Yeah.
And because of Evanston is the common. People will come and go, but the thing that we call Evanston, whatever that is the common thread.
It's lovely. I'm getting ready to turn to the audience and ask some questions, so just an alert for the stage manager too, and so you could be thinking about them. But could you each say something briefly so we can get to what's coming up for you? And let's start with you. What's coming up?
I invite you all to drive by Church Street because we're over halfway built on a brand new $33 million theater. 80% of the money raised for that theater by the brilliant Kim Hoopengarner and Tim Evans and myself, we've had a lot of breakfasts and lunches with folks, but 80% of that money that we've raised has come from Evanstonians. And which tells you how people value what we're building here, not just for now, but for the future. So I think, like, maybe, God willing and the creek don't rise, September 17th of 2026, we'll open our first production. After we'll do a benefit in the middle of August, a gala in the middle of August, and then we'll open the first show and have the first full season.
Fantastic. It's just
Yeah,
fantastic.
it really. I remember it's so weird because I remember the day I walked in to Northlight as artistic director to the North Shore Center, and I just thought, oh man, we got to get back. We got to get back because we are merely. Their attitude there is we're merely booking, we're merely renters, actually. And, you know, we put a lot of money to be into that space and to finish it off. But there wasn't the sense of ownership that the city of Evanston has for all of its institutions, the sense of civic responsibility. It's all Old Orchard to them, it seems to me. I know this is going on Facebook, but it's been great for us. We've been there for 28 years, 29 years maybe. But the truth is, when you have your own home and your own strong community like Evanston, that sense of civic pride, it can't help but be infused into the work.
Yeah.
And the conversation between the art, because we do a lot of new work. That's what I believe in. One of my predecessors, Mike Maggio, was very into new work. And I am with him. And I was dear friend. I assisted him, and we worked together so much. And we always believed in new work. And for me, the new work always, I think, should reflect the community that you're in. You know, our mission right now is changing perspective and encourage compassion. And I think that's really important. And I kind of feel that mission came from our community here.
Well, congratulations. It makes me think, too, I don't know if Chicago's unique in this, but it sure feels like it. There are a lot of purpose-built theaters in this town. Yeah. You know, they're not just moving into a theater that already existed. And even post-COVID, we've got several, you know, Jackie's extending what she's doing. Steve has a place. Timeline. It's amazing. Jen, what's coming up?
I'm going to go real small. This is our first year without Joyce. And as I said, it was her vision that began the Young People's Company. And her funeral last year was on closing night of the Young People's Company, which seemed fitting. And we just started. And we start our first rehearsals for the Young People's Company this weekend. So when we think of the incredible women that have driven Evanston Theatre, we're continuing her legacy.
That's fabulous. Gloria.
Actually, there is the me that is the playwright now, and basically I have a show that's going to go up at the Alliance called not Elijah Rock. What's it called? Zakopa. Just turned in the first draft. So, also have a piece coming up at American Blues Theater. So a lot of my focus right now is really on writing, and for me, writing is always writing myself into new knowing, and then finding other people who wish to explore that new knowing. And there's a lot to know right now and understand and unpack. So I'm excited about that. But in the very near future, next week, I will be here, right, Tim? You did get my tickets, right?
I did.
Okay, good. All right, now that I have my 2 tickets, y'all, is there any more?
That many.
Okay. Yeah, that's why I want to get mine first, because I was out of town last week. So, but next week, as far as ongoing, I will be here at Giovanni's room.
The Baldwin Giovanni experience.
Thank you. Say it again loudly in
The
your theater
Baldwin
voice.
Giovanni experience.
Baldwin Giovanni Experience, which is a conversation between Baldwin and Nikki Giovanni, and that is created and directed by Bria and the brilliant Tim Rose. So if you get a seat, come, if you haven't seen it. And I believe there are 10 upstairs. There will be other information about what's on the agenda, what's the rest of the season coming up.
Oh, this is it. That's it.
Oh, that's it? Okay, so we start next year. Then come back next year.
Come back next year.
Yes, true.
I should have mentioned American Blues, purpose-built theater too, brand new.
Oh, yes, brand new.
Brand
Woo, yes.
Yeah, amazing.
And close, 10 minutes away.
Yeah.
I love when I don't have to drive far.
Go see. Could we have some house lights?
Yes.
If people have questions.
Hey, Jazz, give me some house lights. Can I have some lights, man?
There they are.
Who's got a question?
Who has a question?
Thank you all for
Is
this.
that Preston? Oh, I'm sorry.
The period you guys are talking about, the 1970s, the national press at that time, when it wrote about Chicago, used the phrase Chicago style of theater. And what they were talking about was a Chicago style of acting, really, of sort of in your face. If you sit in the front row, somebody might spit on you. The best example I have that I can think of at the moment is John Malkovich being in a production of Curse of the Starving Class. You guys probably know this anecdote. And most actors in New York or Seattle or anywhere else doing the part where he's supposed to pee on his sister's art project would stick a water bottle in their pants. John Malkovich actually peed on the project that was on stage. So, you know, that was a wonderful thing.
They didn't have the budget for the water bottle.
So anyways, there was this Chicago style of theater in the period you guys are talking about. And I'm wondering if, or at least there was the legend of a Chicago style of theater. I'm wondering whether you guys feel that was a real thing. And if so, does any of that still remain?
Question.
I think I'm old enough to have spanned, not unlike Gloria, we've been around a while. I think there's still it's all about the truth and not affectation. You know, what I say about Chicago theater is New York, when people go to New York, playwrights, directors, actors, that's the big grocery store. But Chicago's the kitchen. We're cooking it here.
That's really true. Anybody else have a response?
I would say yes, and I looking through. My daughter is also a theater artist. She's at Carnegie Mellon now, getting her MFA in directing. Yay! But also went to Northwestern and went through the Evanston public school system. So, and I thought she was going to be. She was a Chem Phys major. I thought she was going into the sciences, but anyway, she is. But Evanston zeitgeist just pulled her in. And she was at Hartford Stage for 7 or 8 years, which is in Connecticut. And she said, and that was her first time really living away. And she said, Monty Theater is different here. It's good, but it's just not Chicago.
Wow.
And yeah, and I think maybe we shouldn't take it for granted because we live here, that there is, even from small storefronts all the way through, there is something that is organic, and I think it comes from that sense of improvisation that evolved from, the Second City, that sense of creating something new, the sense of being in the Midwest, where you got a lot of straight land, you can see forever. But yeah, I think it is a real thing. I think sometimes it does get lost, okay? Because there is a lot of, I don't want to say a lot, but there is now the bringing in of people from outside sometimes to cast, versus sometimes, going, seeing what's already here. But yeah, I think there's something very, very special about Chicago theater, Chicago actors is there, and the stories that are told, that are chosen to be told. There are also a lot of new companies that are starting, that are, they used to be saying, if you saw, 3 actors sitting at a table talking, there might be a theater company in a few minutes. So yeah, and I think that energy of newer companies evolving, and not necessarily all surviving, but the evolution of it is saying we're trying, we're growing.
I think there's.
We have a question on this.
Okay, go ahead.
Hi, my name's Sarah, and I have a 2-part question for you guys. One, I'm going to be co-directing a play at my church, and I have what is some advice you guys can share with me? And the other part of my question is, what is your favorite play that you've directed?
Oh, any advice?
Wait, what was one again, Sarah?
Here you go. Let them know again.
I'm co-directing a play at my church, and do you guys have any advice for me as co-director, what I should do, how to pick actors for parts?
Excuse me, what, would you mind if I ask what church?
The Unitarian Church of Evanston.
Oh yay, Unitarian. And what's the play?
The Thanksgiving play.
Oh. I'm serious. Oh.
Wow. We're,
Well now, she's doing it, and when are y'all doing it?
In June of next year.
June of next year, put it on your calendars, Thanksgiving play. Will it be at the Unitarian?
Yes.
Okay, it'll be at the Unitarian. Okay. Go ahead. You have advice?
advice.
Well, you just got some great advice right here. Market, market, market. Be proud of, what is your who, what, where. Be proud that you've got this play. It's a great play.
It's a great play.
Be proud that it's happening in the historic church basement that has started so many spectacular theater companies. Make sure that you get our emails and send out the information.
Network.
Because yeah, it's figuring out how to honor your time and your talent. Know that people will come to see it if you believe in it, and oh my gosh, good God, trust your instincts and your courage to have brought that up in this room with people who love theater, and let's sell out that first that opening night with the people in this room. If we're here, that's our mission, right? That's our next step. Here's the artist that we want to next support. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
You're going to get, in terms of casting, make sure that you go to the Chicago League of Theater's website and make sure that it's the casting opportunity is in that, because that's a hot play, and Evanston is the right community to be doing it in, because it's so acerbic and witty relative to what's the now, what's happening now. So there are a lot of non-equity actors. I'm assuming it's non-equity. There'll be a lot of non-equity actors that really want to be in that piece.
And also, is it centered why you are doing that play? You don't have to necessarily share, but do you have a clear idea why that play now at the Unitarian Church and why you were involved? Because, is this a first play for this group? Oh, okay, never mind. Oh, you were assistant directing. Okay, so, but I'm just saying, co-directing. Keep it centered as things get hectic, as you move toward the production, keeping it centered why that play is important. It is not just given the Chicago zeitgeist, it is not just putting on a play. It's speaking to a community about something important. So that's
I hope I remember. I'm sorry. I hope I remember this right. But Looking Glass, for every play that they do, the great Looking Glass Theater in the Loop, they say, why this play, why now, and why us? And I think that's this is kind of what you're saying.
That's a very Northwestern thing.
Well, that's where they come
No, seriously. I've had a lot of associates at Northlight who've come through Northwestern because we're born from Northwestern, and so. But they all, whenever I'm assembling a season, they'll say, "Well, why are we doing this play? Why now?"
Yeah.
And sometimes I say it's socially relevant. Sometimes I'm saying, so we can pay for the socially relevant.
Anybody else?
What was the second part of my question was, what's your favorite play that you've read?
Oh, yeah.
What is your favorite play that you have
That you direct.
directed, produced?
That's a really, people have asked that question, and it's really hard for me. If I wanted to be glib, I'd say the next one. And I don't mean it to be glib.
The Whipping Man.
Yeah, but I didn't direct that. But you were brilliant. Yeah. Tim was brilliant. But sometimes it's the ones that are not particularly successful that stretch you and almost break you, but that makes you a better artist. Now, having said that, I have a particular wacky favorite. It's called Lieutenant of Inishmore. It's by Martin McDonough. He does a lot of very dark work, but it's very funny work. We had 40 gallons of blood a week on stage. We had a lot of dismembered body parts at the top of Act 2. That was the 11-year-old boy in me really enjoyed that. Having said that, I really enjoyed doing Grey Gardens, which is a musical.
Oh, that's good.
Which is unusual. A lot of the musicals we do are plays with music, and they're about unusual people. They're not. We did a piece called Sideshow. It was about conjoined twins with gorgeous music, and we did Shining Lives, a play I commissioned, and then Jessica Thebus directed it, and it was about the women who painted watches and then got cancer and died. And it's from that we have labor laws, and it came out of a story that happened here in Illinois. So there's a lot of work that we've done, that I've done, that actually reflects it. First Lady of Television, the woman who was here was just talking about Gertrude Berg. It's a feminist piece. It's about what's happening right now. Weirdly, they were going to cancel her show because one of her co-stars had been a communist, and they wanted to either fire him or we're going to close the show. not unlike Jimmy Kimmel. It happened at the same time. So
CBS too.
CBS, yeah.
Well,
So
East ABC, but
well, then she moved to 2 different networks after that. But my point is, what's delightful for me is finding the stuff that I think is going to ping with our audience. And sometimes they're not financially successful, and sometimes they're more socially relevant and more important for us as artists. And that's the selfish part of me. So, did I answer that question?
Thoroughly. Thank you for doing this, and thank you. Good question. Either Tim or Krista, do you want to say anything about what's happening next? Or
Krista can. Here you go.
Yeah, I think we need to wrap it up in here. I know we can talk a long time, but we do have some snacks upstairs. So for those of you who are not familiar with the building, you go out to your right, up the stairs, and then there's an elevator. It's the second floor gallery, which would be like the south side of the building. And hopefully we can, I know we didn't get to all your questions, but we can continue these conversations kind of in small conversations upstairs. And thank you all, Mark and DJ and Gloria.
Yeah.
And Jen, Tim, and Marcia, for doing that.
We thank Krista.
Thank you.
And Tim, who said, come to our house, because the house